that will honor those who have lost in what has been a war of survival against a brutal disease. As we address the nation today, the situation across the world has continued to deteriorate. In South Africa, we have seen an average of 400 people die every day as a result of COVID-19, and a new infection that have breached the new 20,000 mark on a regular basis. The images coming out of our overburdened hospitals have been terrifying, with makeshift hospitals being set up in parking lots and many people passing away while in ambulances because hospitals have reached their capacity. Funeral homes, burial schemes are faced with a shortage of coffins, and the rate at which people are dying has led to the treating of the dead like livestock, because spaces must be cleared in fridges and coffins must be made. The graveside has become a permanent mark in our lives as we witness all the numbers become names of those close to us and those we love. As the situation continues to escalate, hospitals and frontline workers are overworked and traumatized by the unprecedented amount of death they have witnessed. It is in such a situation where we must all practice restraint and ease the burden on the brave health workers by abiding by regulations and protecting life above the interest of profit. For the first time since coronavirus has hit the shores of South Africa, the President of the country has stipulated that all political gatherings are prohibited in light of the surge in new infections and death caused by the pandemic. The EFF held its first meeting of the new year on the 13th of January 2021 with the highest decision-making structure, the Central Command Team, and the War Council, reaching a decision to suspend all political activity of the EFF pending further guidance by government on the COVID-19 situation. This decision comes as a result of careful consideration of the impact that resuming political activity may have on the spreading of the virus and how it may contribute to the further loss of life. We have therefore resolved to postpone indefinitely the EFF's plenum, which is a meeting of elected leaders of the EFF and public representatives to forge plans and political activity for the upcoming year. The Central Command Team further resolved to keep all national, provincial and regional offices closed and keep all level of engagement in line with COVID-19 regulations to ensure that we minimize interactions between people in these difficult and uncertain times. The EFF will continue to engage with society through various non-contact models, such as the resumption of the online political classes and reconstituting of the digital measures to receive queries and calls for assistance from the public. Most importantly, the EFF Labor Desk and EFF Gender-Based Violence Desk will continue the work of holding business accountable and ensuring that justice is served to the most vulnerable of people in our society, being women and children. Our commitment to this, however, must be met in good faith by government, and this good faith must come in the form of relief to all those who are negatively affected by the lockdown economically and socially. The EFF calls for the reinstatement of all social and economic relief measures to protect the livelihoods of small business and poorest of the poor. This includes the extending of the COVID-19 grant beyond the current regime, which sees the last payment being made in January 2021. Government must ensure that they continue to provide relief to small businesses through the Unemployment Insurance Fund and TERF's relief scheme. And any business owners who claim from government yet do not pay employees must face harsh consequences. Government compel all banks to provide payment holidays on repayments of mortgage, rents payments, loans, and credit facilities for a period of 6 months, as our people are bound to struggle due to the measures put in place to protect lives. Furthermore, there must be a complete halt on all evictions, as it will be inhuman to subject people to homelessness in a time of national and global tragedy. The measures must be coupled with a high level of political conscience, meaning There must be no looting of funds or resources set aside for the relief of citizens, as we saw in the early days of PPE procurement last year. The culture of stealing must be punished harshly, as it jeopardizes life and undermines capacity to fight virus effectively. The EFF encourages all of those who are within the manufacturing sector and production of personal protective equipment to play a progressive role in fighting the pandemic. The role of ethical and legitimate business people become ever more important as we confront the surge of cases and healthcare workers, as well as essential personal requirement protection in order to save lives and provide services to people. We therefore call for Special Investigative Unit, the Hawks, the South African Police Services, to work diligently in identifying and arresting all criminals, including those who are members of the state who abuse the tender system in order to line their own pockets. State institutions and public, however, must refrain from victimizing innocent and legitimate business people who operate in the PPE sector because of the corruption of a few criminals. In the face of massive state incapacity to manufacture and produce the most basic of things such as masks, it is these individuals who fill the gap of a failing state. We reiterate our call for the consolidation of the electoral system in South Africa to one set of elections where local and national government elections are conducted at once. The adoption of this proposal will streamline elections and ensure that public representatives and political parties focus on the mandate of service delivery and do not exist in the permanent state of elections. It becomes more important during this pandemic, where we find ourselves unable to objectively conduct free and fair elections. Free and fair elections must be based on the ability to conduct open campaign, engaging prospective voters, and preparing election machinery in a stable political environment. As things stand, COVID-19 has made all our lives unpredictable, a situation which undermines each and every political party's ability to engage with voters due to fear of participating in the massive spread of the virus. We must begin to face the reality that with lockdown regulation in place up until February and efforts to procure the vaccine for the majority of population is still in a phase of uncertainty. We have already lost significant part of the year. To run elections in such a climate will therefore constitute an undermining of democracy as well as putting the lives of society at risk. We therefore call upon for elections and local government election be postponed up to until 2024, as an election can be regarded as a super spreader event. South Africa lacks the technical capacity and moral integrity to attempt to run an election in any other way besides direct voting through ballot, and the only sensible way to do this without risking life and undermining democracy is through the merging of all elections into 2024. The Secretary General of the EFF will begin a process of engaging all political parties on this position and present to them the already developed concept document on consolidation of elections as the future of South Africa's electoral system. We further call for the postponement of the reopening of all schools in light of the spike in new COVID-19 infections and uncontrollable rate of COVID-19 related death. The new COVID-19 variant has been identified as being highly infectious and more present in the youth. Time and again, COVID-19 has shown scientists and so-called experts that they do not understand it, and a majority of their earlier predictions of the virus and its characteristics have been proven to be false predictions. As the EFF, we oppose the gambling of the lives of children to a virus that all of humanity is yet to properly understand. It will be extremely painful when families start losing their children because as leaders we failed to respect the situation we find ourselves and preserve the future of our nation. Our country will be confronted by unprecedented levels of depression and sorrow should children begin dying in their numbers at the hands of this virus. We do not want to be in a position where We tell this government, we told you so, when the lives of children are lost to COVID-19. All of civil society, trade unions, school principals and parents must unite and call for postponement of the resumption of school activities until such a point where it is safe to send children to classrooms. Furthermore, we call for the closure of parliament, legislatures and councils and for all legislative activities to be conducted online. The loss of political leaders has already taken a great toll on all political parties across board and must be put to an end. The Economic Freedom Fighters has noted the announcement by the Department of Health of South Africa, which stipulates the vaccine rollout strategy to curb the spread and impact of deadly coronavirus in South Africa. In what is deemed to be a historic process, the department has announced that 1 million doses of the vaccine will be received by South Africa in January 2021, and a further 500,000 doses are set to be received in February 2021. The vaccine is sourced from Serum Institute of India, and South Africa's 1.2 million healthcare frontline workers in both the private and public health sector have been earmarked as priority recipients of the vaccine. This announcement represents a breakthrough in efforts to fight the deadly coronavirus, which has left a dark and painful cloud of death and trauma across the world for over a year. Vaccinations have played a critical role in eradicating diseases throughout various epochs in the history of humanity. Illnesses such as polio, the flu, and most recently malaria have caused havoc in society, and it was through the intervention of vaccinations that human life has been spared from unrepentant death as a result of disease. Vaccines are therefore an inevitable and necessary intervention in defeating COVID-19. We condemn all unscientific and nonsensical conspiracy theories that seek to suggest vaccines are part of agenda for population control. Religious extremism and self-centered conspiracies of people who pretend to be intellectuals with fake stories must be undermined wherever they rear their ugly heads. It is not only unscientific but illogical, as a majority of the population consume various forms of Western medicine without any fear of a depopulation agenda. We therefore urge the Department of Health to work hand in hand with the Center for Science and Innovation, the South African Healthcare Practitioners Association, and all relevant experts in virology and epidemiology to ensure the speedy roll out of the vaccine for frontline workers in particular. This must be a matter of priority, and therefore there must be transparency around the process. Red tape must be avoided in this regard, and no unnecessary retrials must take place. We further call for the role of billionaires in medical research and messaging to be decisively called out and undermined by the South African government and the African Union and the World Health Organization. Individuals such as Bill Gates only serve to further suspicion around critical medicine and vaccine, as profit-oriented individuals should have no place in matters of societal good such as medicine. Big pharmaceutical industries must also shy away from suspicious activities such as pricing of critical medication, which leads to racial and economic discrimination of the rollout of medicine. It is the most disgusting height of imperialism when medicine is rolled out on the basis of the wealth of nation, particularly considering the history of the world and the deliberate underdevelopment of global south. Pharmaceutical agencies must also be discouraged from instituting non-disclosure agreements to governments who lead democracies that they are accountable to. It is this neo-capitalist behavior in medicine that leads to distract and conspiracy and can only harm global efforts to protect human life in the face of deadly disease. In the immediate, the EFF calls for the patent waiver on all vaccines to be implemented in order to ensure internal mass production of vaccines in order to suit specific African needs. It is patent waiver that will undermine all those who seek to profit out of a human tragedy. We call the fast tracking of regulation around traditional medicine by the South African Health Regulatory Authority to give specification and accreditation to traditional medicine. It has been shown that traditional forms of medicine are helpful in dealing with symptoms of COVID-19, and development in this regard must be prioritized. Our commitment to logic and science must never be confused as an alliance with Western medicine. We must not depend on Western pharmaceutical companies alone and unwittingly become the champions of the interest of capitalist medicine. There must be integrated strategies, and this includes working closely with nations such as Cuba in vaccine and pharmaceutical development. The EFF will closely monitor the rollout of vaccine, particularly relating to procurement of syringes, PPEs, storage facilities for the vaccines, and transportation. We had long predicted the corruption by parasites that occupy government in South Africa, and we do not doubt that opportunists will once again relish the opportunity to loot throughout the vaccination process. It is this country's inability to develop pharmaceutical capacity, coupled with the reluctance to industrialize and manufacture its own product, that has left us vulnerable to the tender system and capitalist character of Western pharmaceutical companies. Without building internal capacity, we will continue to be at the mercy of billionaires who masquerade as medical experts. We urge all South Africans to comply with all behavioral and medical requirements to curb the spread of coronavirus, and this includes voluntary participation in vaccination process. We will never win this war if we make medicine our enemy. The EFF condemns the closing of 20 local ports of entry by South Africa as an self-hate and deepening of divided amongst Africans. It's an act of classism and racism, and the president of South Africa, who happens to chair the African Union, should have said that South Africa is being closed for African people. It is ironic, as the coronavirus did not enter South Africa through Zimbabwe, Lesotho, or Swaziland, but came from Italy. It is a narrow, quick fix solution to a complex problem and will undermine the dignity of many people who have families and livelihoods in South Africa. We condemn the leadership of SADC for failing to mitigate these needs of our people in terms of cross-border travel, particularly at Bedbridge border. The closing of borders around SADC, knowing how interlinked our economies are in the region at the level of migration, is reckless and inhumane. EFF calls for the high-level meeting of SADC to resolve the matter and resolve on common protocols and procedure for travel, including free testing and provision of clearance permits to enter South Africa. It is irrational to close the borders of Lesotho and Zimbabwe, yet allow inter-provincial travel as if there is a special type of corona in Lesotho that is more dangerous than the one in Free State. The closing of borders within SADC has nothing to do with corona, but reveals a self-hate and desire to appear tough to European nations who have closed their ports of entry to us, yet they can come as they please into our own country. The EFF calls for calm, free and fair elections in Uganda as the country enters the hotly contested elections. We call on President Museveni to desist from practicing thuggery, intimidation, and violence in order to secure electoral victory. Africa must stop being a site of violence at the times of elections because of aging leaders who refuse to let go of power. We call for tolerance and for all parties to accept the democratic outcomes of the elections, even if they are not in their favor in Uganda. As Africans, let us not repeat the undemocratic and violent actions we saw in the United States of America, which is failing to have a peaceful transition of power. Let us practice tolerance and peace towards building a prosperous African continent. In conclusion, we send our condolences to the family of our former DSD Tlengwe Mukalipi, who lost a mother during this difficult time. We wish eternal peace to a mother of our revolution who was a dedicated member of our economic emancipation movement. We send our condolences to the family of Commissar Ntokozo Tlonyani, who lost her husband, Khabu Tlonyani. Our prayers are with the EFF in Johannesburg, as he was the deputy chairperson of the EFF in Johannesburg and a committed fighter in our revolution. We dip our heads in honor of former president of Pudemo, Mario Masuku, a gallant freedom fighter whose legacy of opposing oppression in Eswatini will live long. As the EFF, we commit to his vision of creating a democratic nation for the people of Eswatini that will be free from tendencies of dictatorship and exploitations. I thank you.
Thank you very much, President, Commander-in-Chief. Siko, we will now move into the questions. We urge you to send your questions, journalists to send their questions in the EFF media group on WhatsApp. The Commander-in-Chief will be taking those questions and responding on the spot. Do we have any questions?
There's no question.
There's no question. What's wrong? Are they scared? We will be taking questions from our EFF media group. The Commander-in-Chief will be responding. Has the statement answered every question that you had, journalists?
All right, so that was the briefing there by the EFF leader, Julius Malema, following a meeting of that party's highest decision-making body in between congresses.
To ask questions now. Are they scared?
No, they're
they're
fine.
quarantining?
No, they're fine.
Is it a technical side, or what is the problem? There should be questions.
There are no
If
questions.
they want, okay. What is the question?
There's one question from Samkelo Maseko.
Yes.
Has the EFF started the process of engaging other parties for the postponement of local government elections? This is not the first time we have made this call.
Let's take one.
So that's the first question from Samkelo Maseko.
President, I propose we
Okay.
take. Yeah.
No, but, we spoke about this matter before, and we even wrote the letter to the ANC about this matter, and we were supposed to meet because of this disruption. We were unable to meet, but we're not far from each other with the ANC on this matter. And like the statement says, the Secretary General is now mandated to go and engage parties, political parties individually. And then from there, we'll see if there's a need to gather under one roof to develop a consensus.
Okay. That is clear. Another question now?
Hold on. I'm just waiting for them to come in. There seems to be a problem with the group.
They're typing. It shows that they're typing.
The Competition Commission is warning stationery and uniform suppliers against inflating prices as